around the world, a celebration of the millennium. This is ABC 2000. With Peter Jennings at ABC 2000 headquarters in Times Square, Barbara Walters in Paris, Diane Sawyer in New York, Charles Gibson in London, Cokie Roberts in Rome, Elizabeth Vargas in Sydney, Connie Chung in Las Vegas, Deborah Roberts in Orlando, Jack Ford in Times Square, Carol Simpson in Chicago, and Sam Donaldson at the Y2K Command Center in Washington. With our correspondents spanning the globe in Shanghai, Bombay, Bethlehem, Moscow, Havana, Rio de Janeiro, and across the U.S., reports from Miami, New Orleans, Tucson, Los Angeles, San Francisco. And in New York, Dick Clark counting down to the new year in Times Square. Special Millennium performances by Billy Joel, Elton John, Enrique Iglesias, Faith Hill, NSYNC, Fish, The Bee Gees, Aerosmith, Blondie, Bonnie Raitt, Neil Diamond, Harry Connick Jr., Kenny G, Ray Charles, The Eagles, Barry Manilow, David Blaine, and Barbra Streisand. Now, from ABC 2000 headquarters at Times Square in New York, Peter Jennings.
I was just about to say welcome back to our coverage of the millennium, the end of the century, the end of the 20th century, and the beginning of the 21st. But I'm more tempted to say I hope you're not joining us for the first time, only because it has been such a spectacular day across the world. And we've been here live for a little more, I think it's a little more than 17 hours now, and we're very grateful for the messages we've had from people around the country and around the world who have felt connected by this great feat of technology that has been put together out of a control room just over there behind. Can I have a look, please? Roger Goodman, our director, over there behind this great map of the world, and we've now celebrated the dawning of the new millennium, as we common man, not specialists, tend to call it, in Asia and in Africa, which was not by any means as happy as it was in other places, though there's a lot to celebrate in Africa as well. And then across Western Europe. And now, if you look at this great, enormous map of ours here, which we have in our studio overlooking Times Square, in which there's, as you already know, there's an enormous crowd. You can see where we are now. It's about an hour after midnight in London and Paris, where we saw two spectacular celebrations, and the clock is now sneaking up on Rio de Janeiro. And then before long, in a couple of hours from now, we'll begin touching the easternmost point of land in North America, and we'll go to St. John's, Newfoundland for that, and then work our way all the way across the continent. We've tried, of course, we've had a wonderful celebration, and we've tried to keep both the past and the future in some kind of context. Today we've had a chance to talk about women in both the last century and in the new one. We've talked about children. We've certainly talked a fair amount, but not enough, of course, about science. And we have had lots of conversation about time, from the Royal Observatory, or the Royal Observatory in Greenwich itself, and on the Zero Meridian all the way across the Pacific. And we've talked about population. We've had a few people make their predictions. And now we're sort of settling in for prime time television in the United States, or at least in much of the States. And to get it underway, we asked Charlie Gibson and Barbara Walters, we're going to go to Charlie first, to look back at their own celebrations and tell us what they thought was the greatest moment. Charlie, for a while there, I didn't think we'd be able ever to hear you, or maybe even see you again because of the fireworks and all the smoke. But what was your greatest moment?
Well, Peter, a couple of pieces of videotape I want to show you. As midnight works its way across the Atlantic, you're not going to have fireworks for a couple of hours. And so,
goodness.
As everyone knows, the climax of any big show is the biggest. And so I want to show you the last 30 seconds or so of what we had in London, because it was certainly spectacular. And the most amazing part of it was the scope of it. The fact that it extended simultaneous fireworks for a 4-mile stretch along the Thames. And there's my silly face in the foreground there, because it was just amazing. I'm a sucker for this kind of thing. I just love it. And to realize what had come down from the skies in London during this century, and how much this country endured during the war, and then to see the faces of all of those people just rapt looking at the sky, it really was a magnificent moment. One other moment I want to show you, which is from the celebration at the Millennium Dome. There was a singer there who was singing, well, they said it was a modern version of God Save the Queen. And we have just a couple of seconds of her singing this that'll give you some sense of what it was like.
God save our gracious Queen, long live our noble Queen. God save the Queen.
Now, Peter, in attendance, of course, was the Queen herself, and when they finally took a picture of the Queen, which we will show you in just a second, she looked a little bit like she was having a root canal. I don't think she particularly appreciated the modern version of God Save the Queen.
God save the Queen. God save the Queen.
Isn't that nice? She seemed to be saying.
Come on,
I don't
Charlie.
really think she thought it was.
I'm going to defend the Queen. I remember when the Queen went to New Zealand many years ago, and she was greeted, as so many people are in New Zealand, by the Maori tribesmen, who, as one of their expressions of familiarity and welcome, is to turn and show them their backsides, to moon the Queen. And she had about the same look on her face then. So I think, in all honesty, she's trained herself in almost 50 years on the throne to keep her cool.
Oh, I'll defend the Queen, Peter. I'm not sure I'll defend the singer. That was all.
Oh, I see. Charlie, I want to ask you a question about personalities, because, you know, we've talked a lot today about the list. We talked about the athlete of the century. We've all had the man of the century, or the woman of the century, the athlete of the century here. In Britain, does Winston Churchill automatically the person of the century?
Sure, it's not a debate here. Charles Krauthammer wrote a piece in the States, and it was published over here, and I think it's generally accepted. Churchill held this country together, and he exhibited the grit of the British in the most trying times. This has not been an easy century for the British. They came into it with Queen Victoria on the throne. Britain reigned supreme. They had the empire, and now at the end of the century and the beginning of the new one, they debate their place in the world, whether they really want to be a part of the European Union, whether they need to keep their own currency and whatever. It's been a very difficult time, and Churchill not only held this country together, but I think you could arguably say held the Western Alliance together, and was a transcendent figure at that period of time, and would certainly be my choice of man of the century, and I think it would be unanimous here in Britain.
Well, you're not alone. I was listening to David McCullough, the historian, the other night talk about the person of the century, and he certainly chose Winston Churchill, and there's a whole constituency, of course, for Churchill along with Roosevelt, and as there was, Time magazine, of course, chose Einstein as its person of the century here. Well, Charlie, did they ever get the river on fire?
Peter, don't raise these unpleasant subjects. Nothing ever works totally right in Great Britain, and I don't think they ever did. As a matter of fact, there had been so much publicity about this, and once the fireworks started, apparently the BBC people were calling our people saying, well, when's it going to happen? Is it going to happen? Has it happened? It didn't happen. Okay, Charlie, thanks very much. I know you're not going very far, though. You had me a little nervous with that glass in your hand a second ago, but why not celebrate? Well, Peter, I speak to you with all the wisdom of the new century. To those of you who are mired in the old, everything looks better on this side. Thank you very much, Charlie. Don't go away. We'll be back to you, but we want to go now to Paris, where Barbara Walters has been with us every step of the way today, and who would not have wanted to wait for that extraordinary celebration in Paris. Barbara, pick a great moment if you can.
Well, you know, for 17 hours that we were here, the Eiffel Tower was having trouble with its countdown. The sign simply didn't work. And then 1 hour after midnight, it's now 2 a.m., suddenly the sign worked, and it says, on 2000, the year 2000. You can see it there. I don't think, Peter, I will ever forget the sight of the Eiffel Tower shimmering ablaze as you see it now, with 20,000 lights and the kind of fireworks that we have never seen before. They didn't build a special structure. They didn't build a dome. They didn't have a queen, root canal or not. They just took Europe's most famous landmark and with exquisite taste made it even more spectacular. Take a look. That is pretty gorgeous. And then on the Champs-Élysées, where the crowds were, and there were also millions of people near the Eiffel Tower, there's the Champs-Élysées, and they had at midnight about a dozen different Ferris wheels, each one with a different theme. Acrobats, and there was one that was supposed to be the constellation just as it is now. There was one that you could leave messages on with the internet, and they're all going, they're all ablaze just for this one night. And there's only one that you can ride on. You can see that one there. That they have every year. All the others are just for tonight. The whole city is there. It says you there. You say on 2000, and the whole city is ablaze. The bridges are all lit up, but nothing is more glorious than this Eiffel Tower. I came here when I was, I don't know, something like 12 years old, I remember, with my parents, and thought the Eiffel Tower was so extraordinary. Nothing like tonight.
Thanks, Barbara. 2 o'clock in the morning in Paris, and Barbara's going to stay with us, as is Charlie, and they will go on having this endless competition about which city put on the greatest show at the sign of the millennium. And New York's Times Square is yet to come, yet to be heard from here in the eastern United States. When we come back, Elton John and Connie Chung, and we will find them in a city that didn't even exist at the beginning of this century, Las Vegas, Nevada.
ABC 2000 will continue from around the world in just a moment.